I'm Jennifer Purcell, and welcome to my podcast, Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we will discuss, discover, and learn more about the challenges and triumphs of those with NLD and other learning challenges. I do have a website for this podcast, and it is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter account for the podcast. They are all under the same name, which is Living with NLD. I also have a YouTube channel for the podcast, which can be found by Googling the title of the podcast, which is Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. I would like to tell you about a nonprofit that I use for my research for this podcast. It is called the NLD Project, and I use their blog for my research. They are a nonprofit that is based in New York and is trying to get NVLD back on the DSM, and they provide many resources for people with NVLD on their website. I'll provide you with the website for them in the podcast description. All proceeds from the ads on this podcast will be donated towards the NVLD project. Please feel free to explore the other topics on the podcast, and hopefully you will learn something new from them. I hope you enjoy today's episodes. I also want to mention to you that I just launched my podcast swag on Wednesday of this week and have a page for it on my website, and I will also send you the link to it in the podcast description, and I will also send it to you in the newsletter that I usually send out on Fridays. I am now selling t-shirts, water bottles, and a backpack, and they all have the podcast logo and title on it and the tagline. So I am looking forward to watching the sales and seeing who buys them, and spreading the word more about my podcast. The next group chat for people with NLD or other learning challenges will be on June 18th at 10 a.m. Pacific time zone. And for those of you who haven't been to a group before, it's just a safe place for you to talk about some challenges you may have with your learning challenge, and to be able to feel like you can vent if you need to others who know what it's like to be neurodiverse and not neurotypical. I also want to mention to you that I just launched my podcast swag on Wednesday of this week and have a page for it on my website, and I will also send you the link to it in the podcast description, and I will also send it to you in the newsletter that I usually send out on Fridays. I am now selling t-shirts, water bottles, and a backpack, and they all have the podcast logo and title on it and the tagline. So I am looking forward to watching the sales and seeing who buys them, and spreading the word more about my podcast. Good morning. So today's episode will be about NLD and car accidents. Have you ever gotten into a car accident because of having a learning challenge, or because of a vision problem, or because you weren't paying attention? Unfortunately, I have been in 3 car accidents that were my fault. My first 2 happened 3 years ago when I was getting used to driving with NLD, and the most recent one happened this year. Just so you know, I'm not telling you about these for the reason I'm not telling you to encourage you to get in a car accident, because it's not a good thing, but I'm telling you to share my experience and to let you know that if you have experienced a car accident, that you're not alone, and to help you not make the same mistakes that I have in life. at least in this area. So the first one was so scary because I was knocked out for a little bit and I was unconscious and I didn't have my glasses on. I remember what happened. I remember that day as if it were yesterday. And that was one where I ran into a parked car, and the reason I got knocked out was because I ran into it at 40 miles per hour, so that was pretty fast. Nobody got hurt in any of the car accidents I've had, which is thankful. Unfortunate. The only car accident that I don't have on my record, and it's not really an accident, it's more just like a thing that happened accidentally because of it was raining and I was on the freeway and I didn't stop slowly enough, and I accidentally bumped into a person's rear end, and we pulled over and we exchanged contact information. She didn't report it because I never got a call about it, but she was concerned because it was her work car that she uses, and she was concerned about her Taylor hitch, but that was the only thing that I hit. So, I mean, there was no Taylor attached to it. She was just concerned that that might have been damaged, which it wasn't. So, and the first one was more shaken, made me more shaken and got rid of my confidence because I totaled the car and I broke the front axle and I couldn't get it. I guess you could say dislodged from the other car because of the axle being broken. So I had to have the tow truck do that. But in general, my confidence was definitely shaken more after the second one that I had a few months later, that I didn't drive again for at least a year. I had my parents drive me around more because I didn't like driving with NLD and my migraine condition. I couldn't drive when I was nauseous and had my head exploding with pain because I couldn't focus. Once I got my migraines under a little bit more control and had enough of a break, I started driving again. But because I hadn't been driving for so long, it felt like I had to start all over again with learning, which was unfortunate because that didn't make it any easier. I remember when I was trying to feel the car as an extension of my body, it was so hard because it felt like it was separate all the time. Like I couldn't control it when I know I can control the car. But like it was so hard to learn how to park the car correctly in a parking spot because I was used to, let me see if I can describe this correctly, but I was used to parking it where I didn't have to back up. I could just pull it out of the parking spot because that was easier for me. And even though that was easier, I wanted to learn the way where you would back out of it and pull into it straight. But that was so hard to get the angle right and the timing. I've gotten a lot better at it now because I practiced so many times with my mom on that and my brother and my dad. It's not an easy thing because of visual spatial with NLD, and having slower reflexes makes driving harder as well, and trying to estimate distances, how far you are away from something, and trying to process information quickly. So that doesn't help. And on top of all that, sometimes my head does hurt too much due to weather changing. That's why I get migraines or stress or hormonal things. My most recent car accident was when I was backing out of a parking spot and I hit a car that was nearby because I hadn't turned enough away from the cars to not hit them while I was leaving the parking lot. Excuse me. Um, and I hit another car, and I was so paralyzed while the guy was asking me for my information and that I didn't get out of the car. I was just in shock that it had happened again after 3 years of not having one and of trying to improve and do better. And I didn't get out of the car to see the damage on my car or his car. I just gave him my information, and then I drove away. He didn't even provide his information, which was a disappointment. The good thing is that it wasn't that much. I was just bumped his bumper, and there's more of a scratch on my car than a dent. And based on the impact on mine, I know his wasn't that bad just by looking at it. But my point is that even if you are paralyzed with fear because something happened again to you that you've experienced before after so long and you thought you had improved enough, don't be afraid to get back on the horse and try again. I've still been driving after it happened. It happened, I think about more a little over a month ago, and I still want to improve my visual spatial more because I don't want to have another car accident, but I'm not letting that accident discourage me from driving again. And actually, some things I have been doing to improve my visual spatial since that happened was I've been jump roping, which does impact your visual spatial because you have to time your jump with the rope. And something I tried recently, because I've been doing this for a while now, I tried doing it with my eyes closed just to see if not being distracted by other things around me would help. And it did. I actually did better with my eyes closed than with them open, which I thought was interesting. And I can do it by jumping backwards and have my eyes closed at the same time, which I think is pretty cool that I can do that. But back to driving for a second. I know that neurotypicals get into car accidents as well. But my point is that I don't think that would bug them as much as a neurodiverse person, because when you're neurodiverse, at least for me, I overthink things and I think about them too long. And because I do those two things, it takes me longer to get over something. So I have gone over it now, but in general, it's more challenging for me to get over things. And it can be discouraging when you've made the same mistake again and you thought that you were over making that mistake, and then you realize you're not, as far as long as you thought, and you're like, why did I make this again? It is frustrating, and it made me want to throw things and yell and scream. But I won't give up because I know I've come so far. And I remember being so frustrated about it that I yelled at my dad, and I apologized for doing that later to him. But I was just so frustrated because sometimes I don't like having NLD, and sometimes, in fact, I hate having it. And that was one of the times I did. Is like, if I didn't have NLD, I wouldn't have had as many car accidents as I have. Maybe not any at all. I don't know. But again, I'm telling you about these things because I want you to learn from my experiences so that you don't have to go through them, or if that you have already made similar mistakes, you don't feel alone. And hopefully you will learn something from my mistakes. I have talked about driving challenges with driving before on this podcast in episodes 11 and 49 of year one, if you would like to go back and listen to those. My parents are very good at teaching me how to drive and how to improve. They spent countless hours with me in their vehicles and mine. They have guided me through so many challenges in my life. I'm very thankful for their support. My mom even stood in the parking spot for me when I was trying to improve with parking. She would guide me to know how to turn to make the car straight in the spot. And she trusted me that I wouldn't run into her, which is a lot of trust. I know that there are some neurodiverse people who can't drive because of their visual spatial deficit. And for me, I can relate to that because I have made many mistakes, even though I can drive. And some of them have scared me quite a bit. I also know that there are neurotypicals who can't drive because they are too old to remember how to do it, aren't alert enough, or can't see well enough. Or they have a physical ability that doesn't let them drive, like being blind, colorblind, deaf, or paralyzed. Or it makes it harder for them to drive. The differences between those people and me are their limitations are more visible than mine. I'm not minimizing those limitations. I'm saying they are different. Mine is invisible, and people rarely hear about them or about it. Because people rarely hear about my challenges and others' challenges with NLD, it's harder for them to believe it and understand them. I wish it was easier for me to describe to my parents what I see or what it's like for me when I drive. But I can't unless they spend enough time with me seeing how difficult it is for me to do it. You may be wondering why I haven't given up after all this with driving. I haven't because I don't want to. I know I can do better because I already have. And the only way to go from here is up. I don't like giving up on tackling my challenges in life because it's too easy to do that. It's way harder to improve on them, yes, but it's also more satisfying when you do, because you can say to yourself, I did that, and I remember what it used to be like before improving. I was playing the card game, May I, to take my mind off the accident, and I had a realization. I realized that I was still really good at doing math and adding up the scores. This made me feel better because I knew that was an improvement for me in math. It took a lot of energy and tears for me to get better at it. I know I can do the same with driving because I already have. I'm going to do more puzzles to help with visual spatial challenges because they are fun and do work, and I know I can improve. I hope that this episode made you not feel so alone in the world of neurodiversity and car accidents. Please think about all the ways you have improved when you got discouraged and thought about giving up. You have 3 choices to do. When something bad happens, you have 3 choices. You can let it define you, or let it destroy you, or let it strengthen you. I chose again to let this strengthen me, not to destroy or define me. I'll talk to you next Friday. Also, another announcement that I have to make is I recently created another podcast called Sleepy Butterfly for people who have challenges with sleeping at night or meditating, and it's geared towards people who are auditorily sensitive or have chronic migraines, and being able to have nice, relaxing nature sounds for them to fall asleep to or to meditate to, and be able to be refreshed the next day or when they come out of their meditation. So some of the sounds are like chimes or nature sounds like water or rainforest. And again, it's called Sleepy Butterfly. It is on Spotify and also Apple Podcast and Google Podcast. And it's on everywhere else where you can get podcasts as well. So I hope you are able to get some benefits out of that one also. As I wrap up, there are some things I would like to share with you. I do have a website for this podcast. It is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook and Instagram page for this podcast. It is called Living with NLD. I will include the links for those in the description. In conclusion, I would like to hear from my audience. If you know individuals with NLD that I could interview for this podcast, please email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com. What are you interested in learning about NLD? I know I'm not an expert, but I do know I have the living experience of having it. I would like you to practice journaling about your gifts and differences. Also see if there is a way that you can make that difference become easier for you to do than originally it was. Thank you for listening today, and please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to it. Thank you. Bye.